Hello everyone, today we are carving a pine tree. Uh, this began with the thought that, well, Christmas is coming soon and I want a Christmas decoration that I can use even when it's not Christmas. So I decided to carve myself a pine tree that I can leave on the table basically forever, since it's not going to decay that much. And then I can just add tiny little garlands to it uh, when it's around Christmas time, and it'll look good. So everything here was traced beforehand, before any stream, and basically the plan here was to carve away the corners that I was certain I wouldn't need. That way, a lot of material would be removed at once, and it would be then easier to deal with the block of wood, because it was a pretty big block of wood. It was kind of hard to handle, so I felt like if I was able to remove just a whole lot of material at once at the very beginning, it would make everything easier afterwards. So this is the first plan. Now I think I could have done this better. The fact that I started with the corners like this, I feel like it may have made it harder to turn it into cone later. But so maybe I should have started by making a cylinder and then sharpening that cylinder into a cone. But at the time I planned out this project, I felt like by cutting away the corners first, I'd be able to preserve the lines I'd traced longer, if that makes sense. And this block of wood was kind of fun to use. There were knots in it that made it harder to work, but it felt like a good experience, and it felt like a good growing experience. So now here I'm carving away the sides of the trunk. The initial idea was that there'd be a square base for it, but later on, the base was annoying me because it prevented me from making the trunk as thin as I would want it to be. And I started having thoughts of, since it's a permanent decoration, it would be better for the look if it was only the trunk, because then I could put my little chicken statue at the base of the tree, which would look a bit strange if the base of the tree was separate from the ground plane where the chicken would lay. So I ended up changing my plan eventually. But at this point, I was still very much on board with the plan of having the trunk have a separate base. To do this, I started by making carving away a whole side. Then once all of this side of the trunk was carved away, I went from a different angle. That way I had 3/4 of the trunk covered. And once that was done, I basically just tried to match the curve of the first section with what I was carving, and trying to make it as smooth as possible. And well, once I was done with the process there, as I was saying, I was not happy. So much later in the project, I go back, remove the base, and rework the trunk to be a better shape. Also, I don't think it will be that obvious when looking at the video, but the trunk initially was quite crooked in one direction, which also annoyed me a bit, but I couldn't write it without making it much thinner. So that was also a motivation for removing the base in order to be able to rework the trunk. This is also you might wonder why the process of making the decorations aren't the Christmas decorations aren't in this video. That's because since I want to use this decoration elsewhere than Christmas, I don't want this to be a Christmas video, if that makes sense. But the process of making the decorations, that will be my Christmas video for this year. Not that I intend to make a Christmas video every year, but that's what it'll be this year. Apparently this year I'm in the mood for seasonality. First Halloween and now this. One of the things that is nice about this trunk is that once it was carved, it was an excellent way to hold the piece while I was working it. It was a very, very good grip. Like it was very useful. So here I'm turning the base of the canopy into a cylinder that I will then sharpen into a cone. The method here was basically when I did the initial tracing, I made a small circle at the top of the piece, and now I was trying to join the bottom circle with a top circle with as smooth a line as I could make it without losing my mind. Losing my mind isn't the right term. It was. I didn't want it to be a perfect straight line, but I wanted to make it as good as I could just for the look. But since it's organic, it's a tree, it didn't need to be perfect. Even the trunk, I found it crooked, but it could have been correct. Trees aren't always straight, but it felt better this way. To sharpen the cone, I basically turned the wood in my hand, removed a layer, moved a bit down, removed another layer, then went back up, removed a layer, went back down, and so on and so forth, so that every spot has a few layers removed, but the top spot always has more layers removed than the spot below it. I fell into a good rhythm with this. It was kind of hard to grip at this point because I had to be quite close to. Because of the size of wood, I couldn't hold it by the trunk there. I felt it would make too much of a lever on the trunk and it would risk breaking it. But I was basically the trunk was more or less pressed on my belly while I was carving away with a knife in front of me. So that was the hardest thing was for my thumb. The wood was quite hard, especially around the knot. So it was very rough on the finger. I'm probably going to try to buy myself a pad or something for inside of my glove, so that the thumb doesn't feel quite as painful is not the right word, sore, when I'm done with the carving process of bigger piece like this. It's I've yet to find it. I tried to look around a bit in the dollar store and the hardware store. It's working with knives. It was possible. I didn't find anything satisfying quite yet, but it must exist. The reason why I left a circle like this at the top for now is that the plan here was to carve a texture on top of the cone in order to differentiate the branches easier. So for that I needed to have some extra thickness. So by making this circle at the top, uh, by making the cone nut come to a perfect point, I was leaving myself some room to carve the texture. I now think I could probably have done without. It would probably have worked either way, but now looking at the preview, I think I might have gone slightly overboard with the speed of the time lapse. It almost looked like I'm waving the knife around doing nothing sometimes, because these were fairly tiny cuts. But because we see the wood change form, it's not that bad, but it looks a bit silly at times. And this project, because it was big, I actually carved part of it outside of streaming. I still recorded them. So this footage right now is things I did between the second stream and the third stream. Because I felt like otherwise I would be doing too much of the same thing uh, in the same stream. Like I didn't want to have three separate streams where I'm just shaping the cone. That would have been ridiculous. So instead, I did one stream where I was carving the cone, the second stream, and then after that, I carved the rest of the cone upstream, so that the third stream could immediately be the texturing portion of the canopy. That felt better pacing wise for sanity's sake. It would have made too much stuff on the playlist for no reason. It would have been redundant. So so I just axed it and made it outside. But I didn't want to. Prevent you from seeing the process at all, so I did record it anyway. Because, well, in this commentary, it passes quicker, so it's not as much of a waste of your time. I'm trying to be mindful of that. Here we enter the footage for the third stream. Here it begins with the tracing of a spiral pattern. Basically, the plan here for the branches was that there'd be a series of spirals going the same direction to have a somewhat of an even pacing between them. That those spirals would be the top and the bottom of branches, depending on where they are on the spiral. And then I'd be able to carve the sides of those branches after I'd done all of the top and the bottom. Most of the third stream was spent carving the channels that serve the as the top and the bottom, which left the sides of the branch carved mostly off stream for the first pass. Because here, I'm going to expand a bit later, but the first choice of pattern I made, I wasn't exactly satisfied with, so I refined it later. But for now, here I was experimenting on how to trace lines within wire carving. The first thing I did, the first line I carved both sides of the line, and then I went another pass with an angle on both sides again, which I later learned was not a waste of time, but not the most efficient way to work. Because basically, with each spiral I tried a different technique slightly just to see what worked best. And I later realized that I could get away with just tracing one line on one side and then from the other side have an angle immediately, which is half the amount of cuts, so basically half the energy spent. Not exactly, because the third and fourth cuts that I made with the first technique were spent less energy maybe than the first and second cut. But now knowing that only the two cuts were needed, more or less, I will be able to save some energy and time next time I have to do these kinds of lines. So this one I wanted to do in one pass as much as possible. So I basically traced one line all the way around. And those lines I carved with a knife weren't that deep on the first pass, but they were deepened by the second pass with an angle. Where basically the first line weakens an area of the wood, and the second angled line breaks part of the wood along that pre-weakened line, which makes it easy then to remove with some flicks of the knives along into the line. So it worked very well. I'm not sure if this could work in every situation, but for the situation of tracing a spiral on a cone, it worked very well. Here, the knot was really an issue. Really an issue. It was kind of annoying because the bigger knot, when I would trace a line into the knot, the knife would catch into the knot and it would be really hard to glide the same way. It wasn't. I needed to work the wood differently around the knot, and since that was basically the only one I had at that point ever worked around, it was kind of a pain. It's it's not that bad. It's just annoying. Uh, I now understand why people tend to want to have knotless wood when they want to carve. Uh, though I also like the idea of using the shape of a knot into the wood as inspiration for how to carve that specific piece of wood. It feels very magical, romantic. I'm not sure what word I'm looking for here, but it feels like it I think it would feel very good to be able to use a knot in the piece of wood as a feature of what is carved afterwards. I think it would help it look striking without needing to add much finishing. But I'm not anywhere near that level of skill so far, so I mostly that wasn't my intention for this project, so I mostly just pretended that the knot didn't exist and tried to work around it. Um, One thing to mention here is that I did paint it. I'm not. This may appear as though I'm going to be doing this often since my last two projects were painted, but I won't do it that often. I don't want to start using painting as a crutch to allow myself to be more lazy with the texturing or attempt at carving. It's just because those projects felt like they needed. These projects were planned to have paint, but I'm not going to be painting every single time. Definitely not. I like the look of plain wood that has been carved. So this, what you're seeing me trace right now, is the first idea for the branches. Basically, they were just ovals, long squares with rounded edges. I don't know. The exact word for this shape is oblongs. No matter. Basically, that was the plan, but I eventually felt like they looked a lot like some kind of bricks, and I didn't like it, so I changed the shape later. But for now, this was the still within the third stream, and here I was trying to. I was trusting the process, and it's not until the fourth stream where I'd because in this third stream I didn't have time to finish it completely. Doing this part of texture, I was too tired at that point because I had carved all the spiral, which was quite a lot of energy already to spend. So I didn't finish it. Then I finished it in the footage you see right now, in between the third and fourth stream. And here you'll see me make leaps and bounds in progress because I didn't want to waste your time watching the whole process of carving those things that looks like bricks, those attempts at branches. I don't want to waste your time looking at them when I know that they're going to be reworked anyway. And even then, I probably would have gone this way and skipped around a lot. Basically, here, the way I made the decision on how I would show you the carving is I just skipped around a bit further, maybe 5 minutes, showed you one of the carvings, skipped around another few minutes, showed a few of the carvings, and so on and so forth until I showed basically all of the point because it's different than the rest, so it's worth it. But this is how the branches ended up. Basically, I made all of them into trapeze instead by making the edges triangles instead of squares, which made it look more branch-like. I felt like that this was a good idea because it looks a lot more like branches. It still looks kind of silly, kind of cartoonish, but it's not. It does look good. The main reason for the direction of the triangles is that I imagine that the top of the trapeze is the top of the branch that is thinner, and that the parts of the branches that are more towards the ends of the branch will droop down, making this trapeze shape. It's more of a semicircle in real life, I imagine, but it's. I didn't feel like going that detailed. I felt comfortable with how it's how it looks. And here again, since it's very repetitive, there is some skipping around here. Basically, here I was doing the carving each by following the spiral. Basically, four. Since there are four spirals, I would do four of them at once. Then, following the spiral, I'll do four in a stepped pattern. That way, I was certain not to miss one of the branch. But in the editing, every time I finish one cycle of four, I skip ahead. I think 5 minutes, then do another, and to not waste too much time. And here is where I start reworking the trunk. Again in the fourth stream. Basically, the fifth stream is only the detailing, the painting, and the wood burning. So here I just made the bottom into a cylinder, and then I made that cylinder into a trunk shape afterwards by following my guts. And here we are now in the fifth and final stream, where I began with carving wood carving, a wood burning, in fact, a bark texture on the trunk. To do this, I started by tracing to plan the pattern. I started by tracing a few dots surrounded by circles, um, as randomly as I could on the trunk, and then I traced lines going from the top to the bottom, avoiding those circles that I treated as though they were knots in the wood. That felt, and I'm pretty happy, very happy in fact, about how this turned out. It looks mighty good, if I do say so myself. I may have set the heating for the wood burner a bit too high. You'll see there are spots where there are bigger stains or something. This is mostly the shape I carved in the wood. Sometimes, because of the angle I was holding the pen, it would the ledge would hit um, a higher part of the pen than I intended it to. I was carving with the point, but a bit of the tube would touch the wood and burn a stain, so to speak, on the wood, which is lost on the pattern as a whole. So it's not a big deal. It's just something I'll have to keep in mind. Be more mindful of the geometry in the future when wood burning. I made sure when I traced the bark on the trunk that the spiral I was tracing was flowing the same direction as the spirals I traced for the branches. That just felt right. If a tree is growing in a spiral, well, uh, both the branches and the trunk should follow the same spiral. Otherwise, it's just strange. At least that's what it felt like to me. The wood burning section is the one with the fastest acceleration in the whole editing process because it is at 10 times the speed. Because when wood burning, I have to move the wood burning pan very slowly in order to for the wood to burn properly in the area I want. So and because it's not I don't move as erratically as I do when carving the wood. When I burn the wood, I can afford to go much faster without it being a flashing issue. And so here we're almost done with the wood burning section, and we'll soon enter the painting section. You'll see this time I've not forgotten to use the proper overlay. I made myself an overlay specifically to the border around the screen is what I call the overlay. Basically, I had made one for painting, but I forgot to use it when I did the pumpkin, and I regret it. So here it is, just splotches of paint on my normal overlay for wood. And here, just like the pumpkin, I edited this so that every time I went to fetch more paint, it's cut out. So it almost looks like I have a infinite flowing brush. The brush is itself overflowing with paint at all times without it needing to be refilled. Of course, the trick is revealed by the fact that I just said it, of course, but also the pulsating of the paint on the side, because each time I took another plunge of the brush, it would make waves on the top of the paint, so it looks kind of strange and pulsating right now because of that. But I really like this way of editing. I don't know, it looks really funny to me, and I derive a lot of joy from it. So whenever I paint wood, at least that's what I'm going to do. Maybe when I paint actual paintings, but I'll have to see then, because for actual paintings it's a much longer process and it's probably going to become annoying. So here I'm mixing a much lighter green by putting some splotches of green paint in yellow paint, and I use that to just make stripes on the each branches. That way, this was the needles of the branches in my mind. The idea being that those were the ones that were closest to the edge, so the ones on which the sun shone, and the everything else didn't have this highlight because it was shadowed or something. That was the idea here. Now I don't dislike this, but I feel like it could have been better. I also like how it looks right now because it doesn't look like the brush is touching the wood at all sometimes. But that's just the quirk of accelerating a lot. And with that, we reach the end. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to come by whenever you want. Bye.